Welcome to our Kensington Wine Market's Glen Lomond and Loch Scotia tasting. My name's Evan. With me is our Harmony and Sean this time around. Sean's joining us because he is the one of us that's been to Loch Lomond Distillery. So he's going to join in and kind of run the show just because he's been to the distillery and it's a really cool distillery to talk about. We'll give our comments along the way, and everybody else is welcome to give their comments along the way as well in the chat. If you have any questions as we're going along too, just feel free to type them in. And we're 8 whiskeys deep in this one, which is really cool. Hopefully you guys saw the lineup order there. We're starting on Glen Scotia 10-year-old. Next up is the Inchmurrin 12-year-old. Following that should be the Loch Lomond 18. And make sure I've got the right order here. Number 4 will be the Loch Lomond 2011 KWM cask. 5 is the Inchmurrin 12-year-old, the peated or heavily peated Loch Lomond. And then we're going to go back to Glen Scotia to cap everything off. 6 will be Glen Scotia Victoriana. Number 7 will be the Glen Scotia 25-year-old, which is going to be fun to delve into. And then last but not least will be our Gordon and MacPhail Glen Scotia KWM cask 22-year-old, which I believe, is that sold out now, Harmony?
The 25, yeah, I think it is. It is,
I
yeah.
think so.
Our KWM cask?
Yeah, both of our Gordon and MacPhail casks are sold out.
Yeah, well, at least everybody gets to try it tonight if you never had a chance to get one. So with that being said, we're not going to run this like we do with Scotch Malt Whiskey Society or Blinded by Bourbon tasting, where we do a lightning round and run through everything very quickly once and then return. We're just going to take these whiskeys one at a time and talk about them. If you want to finish off your glasses, we're not going to stop you. If you want to keep a little bit in to just revisit on your own or before the vote at the end, that you're more than welcome to as well. So let's start things with the Glen Scotia 10-year-old.
Cool. So I have to admit, I haven't had the Glen. I don't even think I could tell you the last time I had the Glen Scotia 10. So you guys can feel free to nose that for a second, just because as soon as I poured it, it was like, I don't know, it was not what I expected. I'm actually pretty pleasantly surprised with it. Oh man, it smells so good. Anyways, so not only, for those who don't know, my name's Sean. I'm one of the managers there at the shop. As Evan mentioned, the reason why I'm kind of doing at least most of this tasting here is because I was at the Loch Lomond Distillery, but I also happen to be at the Glen Scotia Distillery that same time. Funny enough, it was about a year ago now, and we kind of had to do a bit of a rush tour through it because I don't know if you remember, in October there was a hurricane that hit the East Coast here in Canada and then traversed over the ocean, and it hit Campbellton that morning that we were trying to get through a tour and then bust up the entire peninsula to get to Glasgow. So unfortunately it was a very short tour, but it was still quite good, and we had a good experience regardless. So anyways, gonna jump into the first one here just because we got 8 whiskeys to go through.
Yeah, Harmony mentioned in the text chat there, funky and buttery. Knows that's a good call. It does have what I like to refer to as that Campbelltown funk, for sure.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I'm not sure if I can ever pinpoint like Campbellton specifically, like the funk that's spoken about. Although you can definitely, like, as we might see towards the end when we get to our cask, you might see like a whiskey that was matured in Campbellton versus a whiskey that's not matured in Campbellton, if it's got some of those similarities, or if there's a funky note that you might be able to pick out, or is absent in the last one. But yeah, there's definitely some sort of funk there.
Yeah, I like that. It does sort of scream sort of like young Glen Scotia to me too, where it's got that combination of funkiness and fruit, as has been mentioned as well. It does have, for 40% alcohol, a great fruity note. It's got a nice salt and saline note in there as well.
Yeah, definitely on the palate. And now I wonder if that, so this was bottled at 40, and we were almost lamenting at that before the tasting started. But I wonder if the 40% maybe helps it lean into a salinity or a slick mouthfeel a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a good call. I was talking to Sean about this earlier and just saying, like, man, I kind of wish it was a little bit ABV for the 10-year-old. But if you're looking at this in sort of a comparison price point wise to where it is with sort of the regular flagship 10 and 12-year-olds from different distilleries, Glenmorangie 10, even Glenfiddich 10, Glenlivet 10, or Glenfiddich 12, pardon me, Glenlivet 12. Aaron 10-year-old, and so on and so forth. For the stuff that's bottled at 40% alcohol, it's shown really well. It still does have a lot of complexity there for being so young and so low ABV if you're used to cask strength. So I do kind of wish it was higher, but I am really pleasantly surprised with what is still there at 40%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely surprised. And well, especially at the shop, because we usually poo-poo on anything that's bottled at 40, right? Like we just mock it. But I mean, honestly, if you're gonna spend the money on have something that's 40%, then I mean, you could certainly do a lot worse than this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing on the La Santa the last time we tried that bottling is showing really well right now for 40%, or I would be disappointed in having that.
So I think another like motivation to do a tasting like this was also kind of the idea of the contrasting in distilleries. Glen Scotia being so small, they're like both distilleries also have some similarities too, but Glen Scotia being so small, their output is relatively little, and they were kind of a bit of a, I don't know, not forgotten, but definitely not sought after until the last little bit. And it's pretty much the exact same thing with Loch Lomond. But the contrast between the two is really kind of where I was fascinated with, where like Loch Lomond, I don't know, if anyone's been to like a factory distillery, that's pretty much what you're looking at when it comes to Loch Lomond. I'll take that opportunity as well. If you're not ready to start nosing the second one, don't worry about it. But if you want to, you can start nosing the second one. But because we're going to dive right deep into Loch Lomond with this one. I got a couple photos to show you. But yeah, when we pulled up, like this was on the tail, well, not quite the tail end, but towards the later half of a 10-day excursion through. We did Arran, Islay, Campbellton, and then we ended in London. And I'm sure many of you have been to Islay and whatnot, and all the distilleries are quite small, quite, you know, homely and well, maybe a little touristy now, but you know, but they're small. They're humble little things. And then we pulled up in Loch Lomond after a long drive, and the sheer magnitude of this place is man, it's huge. Here, I'm gonna share a screen here, and I'll show you a little bit.
And while Sean's doing that, I gotta say I love the nose on Inchmurrin. It's so much like fruit salad note at a picnic for me, and it's got a really nice sort of toasted and slightly caramelized like barley note right now as well on there.
Yeah, a little bit of banana like note on there too, like a
Totally.
Overripe banana.
Yeah. So as you can see, the thing is a veritable factory, and that's not necessarily all of it. We also have, try this, and there's two parts of it. And now I can't remember if this second building is the grain distillery, because they actually have a completely separate grain distillery from their malt distillery in here. I'm not sure if that's required by law, or if it's because of the sheer size of everything just forces it to be like that. But we actually didn't really get to go into the grain distillery proper, but yeah, like we didn't really know where to go. It was just a warehouse door, as you kind of saw. We stepped in, and there was just a security desk kind of thing. We're just like, hi, we're here for a tour, and they sent us up a bunch of stairs, and we ended up at this guy's desk. It's just a desk with monitors and monitoring equipment and papers everywhere, like unlike any, you know, like just nothing like we've really been in this whole trip. So it was definitely a bit of a turn, and I think it was like 3 or 4 floors up. So it was just, man, it was just, yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, I gotta say, looking at the exterior there, that photo, it is kind of awesome because it makes me think like I'm born and raised in Creston, which is BC, which is the home of Kokanee beer, and you could slap the Kokanee logo over the Loch Lomond logo and convince me that I was just driving by a brewery, like just some brewery that was built in the 70s and nothing else.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I guess we had the Molson Brewery in Canada and Calgary here. But we also have ADL.
Yeah.
Which I haven't been there myself. I think some of the companions of the Quake, at least the Calgary chapter, got to go there at one point. So I imagine it's probably somewhat similar there.
Yeah, very sort of factory-esque, indeed.
I wonder if we can somehow arrange like a trip there for some of the people who might have missed it, such as myself.
I think Harmony's kind of working on something potentially in the background there for that.
Cool, fun.
Yeah, the request has been put in. We're waiting for feedback.
Perfect. So what is everyone thinking on the palate of this one?
Lots of like multi-cereal kind of notes for me, and definitely spicy.
Yeah, like if we talked about, or I talked about the Glen Scotia 10 being very Campbelltown-esque for me. Inchmurrin for me, if we're talking about like a regional style, to me it screams Lowlands stylistically, where it's like fruit driven. It does have that spiciness, but it's at the same time it's light. Like it's not like a really weighty spirit in style.
You said fruit salad earlier, and on the nose, and it totally reminded me of like a fruit salad with like cottage cheese in it. Like it had that like creaminess to the nose as well. But the palate is surprising. It's quite different. I get a little bit more like dried parsley almost.
Oh, cool. Some herbaceous notes there.
Yeah.
I mean, the finish is definitely leans really heavy into something juicier for sure. But yeah, you're right. It kind of like, it really starts off in a more barley forward, cereal driven kind of spirit, which I quite enjoy. At least lately, I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Jeff's putting forth a flash mob idea for ADL. I think that's awesome. You guys do that while I try and sneak a barrel out the back.
All right, Jeff. means you got to come to Calgary.
Yeah.
And choreograph a flash mob.
Yeah, my vote's for Ravel's Bolero. I love the flash mobs with Bolero. So.
Do you know if there's any peated malt put in the Inchmurrin?
You know, it's a really good question. Sammy and I had Sammy sort of help me with putting the lineup order together, and he was saying that he feels like there's a bit of peat on there.
I kind of feel like there's a tiny touch.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that, like my understanding with Loch Lomond as their releases are right now, Loch Lomond has like designated names for each style that they do, and they do a multitude of different styles of whiskey based on the stills that are used, of which they have like 3 or 4 different styles of stills, including column. And then they also have different names for their spirits based on the peat spec of the malt, and potentially based on the yeast they use as well, as far as I know. With their official lineup, and this is part of their official lineup, they've cut everything down, so they're just using 3 names. They're using Inchmurrin for their light and fruity style, and then they're using Loch Lomond for their sort of like more broad, lightly peated style with some fruit notes. And then for Inchmurrin, which is their 3rd one, they're going into more sort of meaty, peated styles. But that's just for their official bottlings. They could be using some of their Loch Lomond spirit to make the Inchmurrin bottlings or what have you. So there could be a little bit of peat in the background, even though it's maybe designated. I'll have to take a look. I think it is actually designated as unpeated on their website, but I could be wrong for Inchmurrin. But there is that sort of like slight earthy, musty, peppery note on the background there for sure.
Yeah, I think from what I've read, they like, at least on, well, I'm not really sure what they do on their swan neck stills, but on their straight neck stills, I think that the 2 main styles are either like unpeated, medium peated, or like heavily peated is the other one. I think heavily peated, or maybe one more, but I'm not sure how much they blend their styles together or not. That's yeah, there wasn't like a ton of information on that one, unfortunately. But
sounds like they're gonna have to do another tour, Sean.
well, you know what? Like another confession I have to make is that like the guy that gave us the tour, like, you know, bless his heart, he was one of the nicest guys, even if he was a little like gruff and very non-emotional. He had probably the most heavy Glaswegian accent I've ever heard in my life, and I literally could not understand probably 70% of what he said. So like, luckily there was some signs describing some of the stuff he was talking about. And so I was able to kind of make notes of a few things, but I mean, he was, yeah, like I said, he was a darling, but I mean, I couldn't barely understand him. Yeah, I haven't mentioned like the multiple yeast, they have 4 different yeast strains that they might use.
4? Wow.
Yeah, 4 different, depending on what they're going to do. Fairly long fermentation times. In fact, I think it was 130 hours or something like that. They end up being so long that it undergoes 2 fermentations in that time. Yeah, and so like the secondary fermentation ends up really kind of charging the ester, the fruity esters on the final wash, which after that, depending on what, you know, the still that you're putting in, will kind of, you know, either accentuate that even more or a little bit less.
I wonder if that's something that's changed over time, because one thing that you had mentioned, Sean, before we got into things here is that how like Loch Lomond wasn't really on anybody's radar for a long time, and didn't really deserve to be in many cases as well. But over the last, say, 5 years or maybe 10 years, it's, especially since they've released sort of like their first round of these new official bottlings that we've been getting over the last 4 or 5 years, has been incredible for their official bottlings, especially.
Yeah, totally. And I know like how long ago it's been. I mean, it that's up to debate for, because it depends on where you're reading and what you're, and you know, like, and what exactly you like, the nuances of what you're saying. Because like, and some people would say it's when there was a new master blender that came into the picture to start rearranging their product line. And I think that's what we saw in the early 2010s, when it was like, we had like that first release of the Open and stuff like that, which was really kind of interesting. Or if it was a little bit later when they got bought by what is it, Hill House Capital, I think it is, which is the same investment company that did Glen Scotia, funny enough. And it kind of seems like that company made a push for their newly acquired assets to really kind of rebrand themselves, kind of thing. Originally, for the longest time, they were really just making whiskeys to blend. Like, I don't think there was much in the way of Loch Lomond anything, but they've been around for, you know, quite a while. They were built when the original owners of Little Mill Distillery, who's long since been, I think they're demolished and of course gone, but at the end of World War II, I believe, the need for single malts for the purpose of blending increased, and they needed a way to increase production. So he built a second distillery using the exact same stills that he had in the Little Mill, which was the straight neck still, like fairly novel new design, in order to make that lowland spirit with, but without physically triple distilling, which I'll go into in a second. But yeah.
The World War II thing is interesting. I'd have to double check, but I think like the sort of like the start of the boom for distillery building was Tullibardine, which came around in 1949 or so, and then Loch Lomond would have been closer to the tail end of it, because I think it was 1964 or so that it came into fruition. I could be wrong. Should actually check one of my malt whiskey yearbooks to double check, but it's somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure it was built in the 60s.
Kevin Donde says, some of the more attractive bottlings have been using wine yeast specifically, but there hasn't been a ton of releases of it. The one that I mentioned before, the Open, I believe that is one of them. It was 12 years old with like just a wine yeast. They apparently there's a bunch of casks laid down still, and a few of them got out to the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, but I don't know personally which ones those might be. I'm not sure if we even got any. Maybe Evan, you know.
Yeah, they've never gotten. They've mentioned the wine yeast in some of the write-ups that they've done regarding Loch Lomond at the SMWS, but the bottles themselves have never gotten that specific, unfortunately. There are some like very quirky bottles that very well could have been from the wine yeast that have these great sort of tea-like notes that come through, that are just almost on another level beyond what Loch Lomond you typically see. But it's hard to say. Should we jump into another one? Well,
yeah. If no one started nosing number 3, let's we'll go through that. I should also probably say this lineup. So we didn't really get to taste anything at the distillery. They didn't have a tasting room or anything like that. And I was actually we went because more of an opportunistic thing rather than anything else, because we've never been there. It was I don't even Andrew's never been there at the time. Yeah. We didn't really know what to expect, and we just kind of booked it. So unfortunately, as Loch Lomond might be prior to 2015, it wasn't on my radar, not even a little bit. I think at that point, Evan, you might have had a bit of a soft spot for it, but it hadn't quite hit me, so I just had no interest in it. And so I didn't really. I haven't tried any of these. Actually, I haven't tried any of these Loch Lomond except for our cask. So it's kind of fun to kind of go through for the first time. That first one was quite good. I enjoyed it, but that banana note that I was getting on the front of the palate was a bit too much for me, because I'm not a big banana fan. But this guy being a little bit more, it leans into the peat a little bit more, is a little bit more up my alley. I'm actually this guy's kind of cool. It's got some interesting I hope it's not the glass, but it's got some kind of a almost like a bread mold kind of tone to it.
Yeah, there's something penicillin-esque in there, or going into even into a light blue cheese note for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Blue cheese, yeah.
But it was the SMWS that really sort of grabbed my attention for Loch Lomond, and then over a period of 2 years, I think we had the Inchmurrin 12, the Loch Lomond 18, and the Inchmurrin 12 all in the whiskey calendar, and I had a chance to write them up and really pay attention to them and do a tasting note up. 1 year, the Loch Lomond 18 was one of my top 5 in the calendar. It really stuck with me for having this sort of and I think this newer batch, this is actually a newer bottling that we've gotten, where the bottle style and shape and the livery has changed just a little bit. But this one doesn't have quite as much of it, but it still has a slight sort of bittersweet Amaro note to it on the nose that really reminds me of Campari stylistically.
That's
where you get
one?
this, the 18.
Oh, nice.
Where
the 18.
It's the 18, sorry. That it just has this almost like citric, sweet and sour note at the same time in a cool manner for me.
Cool, very cool. Here, I'll share another photo here while we're going. Does anybody else have any cool tasting notes they want to throw in the chat while I do it? Okay, so we started there. Okay, so when Evan was saying that they have a lot of stills and a lot of and making a lot of different kinds of whiskey. Obviously, you need the capacity to make an output for all of those different kinds of whiskeys too. And this is another thing that just kind of, not even just me, but Andrew and myself, our jaw almost dropped when we went in. As you can see here, there's a fairly long a row of fermenters here, and unfortunately, we didn't really get to see all the washbacks, but they have 21 different washbacks on their malt whiskey side, which is just an insane amount. I think in all of our visits, the biggest was 8, maybe 10 or 12, but to have 21. Now there's a bit of confliction here too. So 21 washbacks was there for their capacity on the malt side of the distillery. I've read in some places that they have another 18 on the grain side of the distillery. but we didn't get to see it. And I'm yeah, for the grain distillery, the most we were able to do is go into the main control room, which had a window into this bit of a warehouse, and you saw a column here and a forklift, and like it was actually a very clean and tidy place, but it didn't really tell you much about what it was. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to see the rest of it, but yeah, I think it was, and I think it's like the washbacks on the inside are only so big. I think it was like like 250 hex or something like that, and then the ones on the outdoor or on the outside are double that size. So it's just a massively huge amount of capacity. Like really, it was a big warehouse tour. Like it was really just like a big factory tour. What's next here? Oh yeah, the next will be the stills too. So when I mentioned so they have 4 different kinds of stills, and one of those being the actual grain still on the grain side of the distillery. The other is a coffee still, proper coffee still. They have traditional swan neck stills, which are or swan neck pot stills, but they have 2 of them. And they have these guys, which is the straight neck still, and they have 4 of them. The straight neck still, also known as the Lomond still, anyone who might be a Bruichladdich fan might recognize that name because it's the same type of still that they distill the botanist gin on, although albeit a much smaller version of this. For all intents and purposes, the bottom side of this still works just like a regular pot still, but the top of it works a little bit more like a column still, where in these there are plates on the inside of this column, and they're kind of like shaped in a really funny way. And I'm going to be a little reductive here, or a little simplistic, just because there is a bit more to it, like engineering wise. But the whole point of that, and the whole point of making this still like that, is so they could make a spirit that was similar to a triple distilled spirit without triple distilling it. Mm-hmm. So all the plates and everything in that column, the point of them were to slow down the vapor path. And when you slow it down, you give the heavier vapors more of an opportunity to condense back down and to go back down into the still proper, leaving only the highest, the most volatile, and in this case, the fruitiest, most ester heavy vapors come over onto the other side. So yeah, so that's kind of how that combined with their long ferments and their extended fermentation time and their double ferments in the yeast kind of like gives their darn fruity ass distillery or distillate. So there's a couple more there. I think I've got one more here too. This one's an odd one. I actually we didn't get a chance to ask what that one was all about, but you can kind of see, I'm going to alternate between the 2 there, but you can see they're a little bit differently shaped there on the bottom. I'm not really sure. That might be the one, the non-jacketed one that you were talking about, Evan.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, kind of tough to say. Maybe like if my memory might be gone. Maybe we did ask and I couldn't understand the answer. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was kind of cool. That was I literally have never been in a room with that many different stills before. It was really intense and definitely a treat. That's for sure.
That's really cool. It seems like a distillery that you even if you could understand him, you would need a good day in to understand. All of the science behind what they're doing.
Yeah, I love those photos because it does really kind of entrench in my mind the idea. I always talk about Loch Lomond as being Willy Wonka-esque, mm-hmm. And it does seem like they just put all this weirdness under one roof almost.
Yeah, we'll put a big still here and a little one here, and like we'll make this arm a little bit different.
That's right.
Make it fit.
Jeff has bubble plates. I'm not sure if that's what they're called necessarily. Like proper distillation, at least from like a chemistry standpoint. Maybe they call them that, but like there's like most stills, even for industrial use, for chemical refining and stuff like that, uses the same kind of plates, and they do have kind of funny shapes to them, but I'm not sure if they call them bubble plates or not.
Mm-hmm. Based on what I recall of the old Loch Lomond 18, I feel, and I could be wrong, but I feel like this one's a little bit drier, as it has been mentioned. I'm getting this really cool sort of white, sort of like cracked pepper note on it right now on the finish.
Oh, cool.
You can really see though how like with their three different sort of house styles that they're sort of putting out there right now for consumers, that the Loch Lomond is kind of like a meeting in the middle of Inchmurrin and Inchmurrin stylistically, or maybe we'll see it a bit more now. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people think of the Inchmurrin after our KWM cask here.
This is a really beautiful drink. Yeah, like I can see why you kind of fell enamored with it last year. That's it's got that kind of mainland peat, but without leaning too into the meatier tone. Maybe it's the distillation practices combined. Like it doesn't really get all that farmy, but it does have some elements of it. Like you can definitely kind of pick out that it's a mainland peat. That's cool.
Yeah, I do like the dryness in there too, where like it's probably because of the age, but it's not like leaning full on to like, oh, we're gonna make this like more palatable by making it like hyper sweet and malty and behind it.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin, you I couldn't see the chat while I was sharing the screen, but you were asking if they're all line arms. Yeah, if I remember correctly, I don't think what you were looking at was line arms. I think they might have been well, actually, Jeff might be correct too, or I think it might be, yeah, for like the cooling jacket, it might have been the water lines to go through there, which they can turn on or shut off. Like I'll mention it in the next in our next next dram here, because it actually has something to do with that. But yeah, they have in their straight neck stills, they actually have two different kinds of whiskeys that they'll put in there, or two different kinds of distillate that they'll get out of there, and I'll explain those in a second.
Cool. Well, should we go on to the KWM cask Loch Lomond?
Yeah, let's do it. I love this one.
Yeah, this for this one, it reminds me of, so last year we had a couple SMW or SMOS, Single Malts of Scotland single casks that we got. Everything we've gotten from Single Malts of Scotland have been fantastic. We had this Manachmore from them that was, I think, 13 years old, and Manachmore isn't necessarily a distillery name that like just flies off the shelves on their own, but we had well, all the staff really enjoyed that one, and it went from being kind of like the little runt of the litter to the one that sold out almost the quickest, because it was just so like fruit salad forward and just like rambunctious in style. And this, in my opinion, is probably the closest KWM cask that we have to that Manachmore right now. It's a little bit richer, a little bit more lush, but it still has that great, like, just everything bursting with fruit note that comes off the nose.
I mean, you got to be prepared. It's about 60, it's 60 point something %. So it's a little, it's not shy, and it's going to hit you in the face pretty quick. But well, actually being in the glass for a little bit, it was, not quite as intense, but it is it's a very spirit driven whiskey though. And I quite enjoy that. I when things are on the younger side, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just like being jaded with like young whiskeys, but it really takes something special to really kind of turn my head nowadays. And this is definitely one that that did that for me. We've never been offered a cask of Loch Lomond before. I don't really know if they do a lot of single casks like this, with the exception of maybe barrels for the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society and stuff. And I don't even know how we ended up upon this, but they just like gave us one sample. They're like, take it or leave it. And we all tasted it, and immediately we're like, yes.
Yeah.
Like it was not even a blink.
Yeah. This is pretty fantastic. I love how juicy it is.
Yeah, it is incredibly juicy, and it's it had something that I was going to bring up with the Inchmurrin that they both have, in my opinion, which is this for me a very distinct kiwi note on the nose and on the palate that I really enjoy, and almost the acidity that goes with the like a ripe but still not a yellow kiwi but a green kiwi on the palate, like that slightly tainty note to it. But still remains creamy at the same time. I liken this one to like a fruit flan with cream on top, stylistically, where it's just so lush and rich in style.
Yeah, there's a nice minerality to it as well after that acidity blows off. that I'm really enjoying. Yeah, I love this one.
Yeah, I wonder if this at 10 years, I'm not sure if it was like a fresh bourbon or a refill, but yeah, it was definitely like I think it's got a little bit of that cask on there, but not like too much. I get more. Yeah, I definitely think it's a bit more spirit driven. Like you get like like fresh mango juice. I'm getting a bit more. I still get a little bit of banana like I did on the Inchmurrin, but not quite to the same degree. And all that other potpourri of fruit really just really kind of overtakes it. And oh man, it's just so delicious.
Yeah.
So we had we're trying to decipher like so this is stated on the bottle that this comes from one of the straight neck stills. Being a single barrel, you can also assume, well, no, you can say that it's going to be one of two marks, and that's kind of how that goes. So the two different spirits that they do off of their straight neck stills, which I should also, well, yeah, I guess I should also mention what I didn't mention with the whole Little Mill thing is, not only were they trying to get a triple distilled spirit, but they wanted one that was heavy, which this makes sense because we're getting a bit more of that heaviness in there. Well, not to say that this is like, well, I guess it's the question, is this one of those quote triple distilled, right? So the two styles they have their smaller cut style and their wider cut style. This was another kind of a weird point of contention with what the cuts meant, but the narrow cut style was they're cutting it was an 80% of the entire run that they cut into. The cooling jackets around the line arm off were on, so it was cooling, which causes a lot of reflux, which forces the vapors to come out to be even more fruity than usual. But that's also what partly spurs on that quote triple distillation without being triple. The spirit on this still run comes off the still at 85%, which is about 23% higher than your typical than I think your typical cask entry strength for most distilleries. The second one is they say it's a wider cut, but then they say they're taking 55% of it. So I think what they're meaning is the amount of cut that they're spirit that they're cutting out of what they're keeping. So 55% down from 90 is the typical, and they turn the heating off or the cooling off on the line arms, so they get a little bit more vapors coming through, a little bit more of the heavy, a little bit more dense spirit, and coming off of that is 65%. So between the two, at 12, is 12 years old or 10 years old? This one, I can't remember now.
I think it's an 11.
It's
11.
Isn't it?
Is it 11 years old? Yeah, 11 years old, 60%. I can only imagine this is the higher proof one, the 85% going into cask. I'm not 100% certain. They might have still watered it down a little bit before entering the cask because I'm not really sure. But either way, I mean, yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more about what bottling might have what, because it'd be really nice to grab a couple things to contrast it, to kind of like dive into it a little bit more, because it seems like such a very distillery now that like you could really geek out on it for a while. Like,
no kidding. Yeah, and it's like you said, mentioned with the Inchmurrin. This is one of the glasses or the casks where it's just like I go back and forth of between, is there a bit of peat in there? I can't tell. Like I on the finish, it almost makes me think of it where like it's not very cask heavy, but is that like a waft of smoke or just barrel char or what's going on?
I mean, Harmony mentioned some minerality to this, so I wonder if that's kind of what's kind of playing into it a little.
Could be. Yeah, just some banging some flitty rocks together. There's along with the minerality too on the creaminess of the palate. There's a little bit of a dry chalkiness that comes out that I really like there too.
Oh, man, what a killer bottle.
To me, it feels more like a good oak, not so much peated, but
yeah,
it's hard to say.
If it did go into cask at slightly higher, I guess it might have like took some of the like notes from the char as well, maybe. Yeah, the high ethanol might have a higher solvation property.
It's such a crazy dram because it does go through these different styles as we're talking about too. where like I was getting the light peat note, but then after that next sip, it was like, oh, I'm getting this tanginess on the finish, where it's like going into that kiwi note again, as I was talking about, or even into like a passion fruit juice on the palate for me. It just goes in a lot of different directions, but it's still so well put together.
Sammy said it's like fresh berries. Yeah, like on my last sip, I swear I'm getting like preserved strawberries, like almost like pickled strawberries in a way. Like it was still juicy, but there was a bit of a, you know, a bit of a savory tone on there.
Yeah.
Lovely. All right. So we're going, let's finish off Loch Lomond so we can get back to Campbellton. I'll go through my last couple photos here just so you can kind of get the full picture. There's only like 3 or 4 more photos here. So the last one, Inchmurrin 12-year, which I can only imagine is the peatier of them all.
It definitely is.
Yeah,
peated.
for sure it is. Yeah, absolutely.
It's this it's not quite in Lecheg territory, but there's this it kind of reminds me of lag spirit, where it's got this like phenolic oily note to it, like that's just layered over everything else. And then also has the and this is something I get from a lot of peated Loch Lomonds, like Crofton Gia gets it a lot. A little bit of a starchy, wet cardboard note, and not in a bad way necessarily.
Oh yeah, Croftengia, yet another mark from Loch Lomond. I think I had a list here of things that they've done in a little while. It was like, so like, yeah, they have Inchmurrin and Inchmurrin, which aren't necessarily just recent. They've had additions that have been called out in the past. They also made one called Craig Lodge, Glen Douglas. There's Inchfad, there's Croftengia, and then of course just Loch Lomond. Man, it just like, I guess that, you know, I guess it makes sense when you have access to like just such a myriad different styles. And not only just that, but I mean, if you think about it too, like we don't get it here. I kind of wish we did, because I'd like to try it, but they're the only distillery in Scotland that can do a single blend, because they make their own gin whiskey too. So I mean, wicked.
Yeah, we used to get them because they used to have a Loch Lomond blend, like in the old packaging, just after they finished doing the terrible silkscreen series. They had those like years and years ago. I remember Loch Lomond blend. I think it was a red label. It was either a red label or a green label that you could find on the shelves, and in a green bottle.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that silkscreen bottle.
Yeah, Glen Scotia and Loch Lomond were both inflicted with those. But side note, when Harmony's saying nerd alert, to go even geekier, and Gregory mentions Glengarry was one of theirs too. No Glen Ross though, as far as I know. But Inchmurrin, Inchfad, Inchmurrin, and I think a few others are actually all take their name after islands that are on Loch Lomond itself.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna start up the next photos then. Okay. So the last of the photos I have for Loch Lomond. So this is their traditional, more, you know, their swan neck style pot still. They have 2 of them, I believe, but I'm not sure if there's another place. I could be mistaken. It might even be possible that they only have 1, but I had another photo that had like all of the straight neck stills kind of in a row, but it was a really crappy photo, so I didn't want to subject you to my terrible photography. Yeah, so that one, I'm not entirely certain what marks they do on that. It is going to be more of a traditional single malt, obviously, like, because that's kind of what the name of the game for that is. But then the next one is kind of this is a little weird photo. It doesn't really show what exactly it is, but this is their copy still. And the reason why I took the photo like this is because, as you can see down here, like this is 4 stories down. So it's quite big. And I had to take 3 different photos just to get it all. So we have like that, like the ground floor, and then 3 floors up. This is where I was standing here. And then I did I say 4 floors? I think it's 5, because there's also, this is the very top. And that went all the way up near the roof there. Just a ridiculously large still. I don't know of any other big distilleries in Scotland that have those, but maybe there's one. I'm not really sure. But the only other like well-known one that I know of is probably that Nika has, I guess, because they showcase it so prominently. Yeah, that's all I've got for photos for that.
Sammy mentions Glen Douglas and Old Rajdu. We did forget Old Rajdu in there as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Old Rajdu, I don't think they make anymore, but Rajdu is still a style they produce.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I don't know how I missed that. Yeah. Glengarry. Yeah, that's true. I'm not I don't know if they're doing completely different styles for Glengarry or if somebody else is buying and bottling it. I'm not entirely certain. Yeah, Glen Douglas. Yeah, I mentioned. Yeah, cool. Kind of makes me want to go find some of those old bottles. Like they're definitely, like I said, I mean, like they're not sought after by any stretch, so they're probably dirt cheap. But I mean, I don't know, just for for whatever sake.
Yep. The Inchmurrin, I'm getting more and more fruit notes on that, which is really cool as time goes by. And the peats, it's more like it's not a smoky peat. It's more like an earthy textural to me.
This leans a bit more into that mainland peat, the side of mainland peat, but that I personally don't really dig.
No, you have to dig the peat, Sean. Literally.
Yeah.
Dig it.
Well, you need to in order to have it. Yeah, I get it.
Oh, that's a dad joke right there.
I'm surrounded by you two. Jeez. It does come across still fruitier on the palate though. Like that. Yeah, I'm not really sure what it is about like that kind of peat. I think it adds, well, the only way I can describe it is like a hint of acidity almost to the distillate. Like it's tangy, it's slightly sour, and it's not always my favorite thing. If it's not quite so heavy, sometimes it can kind of mature into something really beautiful. Like I think the 18-year, for example.
Yeah.
But if it gets too heavy, it gets a little too much like younger Ardmore almost, where it's just a little too much for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. I love Lecheg, so it's kind of like just not throwing my palate for a loop at all, but it still does kind of remind me of like a slightly drier version of lag, or the little bit of lag that I've tried in a cool way with that big oiliness to it.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, cool note. Yeah, I agree with yeah. Jeff says Lecheg is no good, and I have to agree with him. And I have to be honest, like even like I mentioned Ardmore, same thing. I do not like. However, both Harmony and I did just try like that single cask G&M, the 97, which is absolutely a banger. Holy moly! I've never had an Ardmore I've liked so much.
Yeah, the cool thing about finding distilleries specifically that you don't like is every once in a while there'll be a bottling that comes along that just blows your mind.
I guess we don't get a lot of old Ardmore, so that might have been part of it. It's like 24 years, I think, that one.
Yeah. Well, and G&M must have gotten a really nice parcel of Ardmore liquid that they put into cask at that time, because there's been a couple like 43% ABV 97 and 98s they've released that have been good too.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah, totally. The sherried ones. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to move on because I can't wait to get to Glen Scotia.
And this is a pretty baller trio to finish up on too.
Yeah. I'll like another confession is Glen Scotia is not really something that's I never really was a huge fan. I think the first time that I started kind of picking up on it was the single cask that we got about 5 years ago. I think it was 5 years. I think it was 2018, maybe 2019.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was quite delicious, and I really kind of leaned a bit more into, not only was it tarry and greasy, but it had some nice tropical fruits to it as well. Really beautiful. And then we had that berries blended malt, that 21, I think, that was also apparently Glen Scotia. And that one was super tropical, and that really turned my head. And I think that was around the time, well, 2017, 2018 is around the time where I started finally getting Springbank too. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that overall feel kind of started to get a little bit more into my bones. And yeah, so but before that, I just didn't really, yeah.
I'm totally with you. Before the KWM cast that we got, that was just so. It's probably among one of the more unique casks that we've gotten, stylistically, but it really did showcase Loch Lomond well, where it really good Loch Lomond always has this sort of like dichotomy going on, where you have this sort of ashy, briny, almost metallic side to it, and where it's very like shipyard and industrial. But then you also get these tropical nuances, and somehow they meet in the middle and just make something beautiful. But it was the Glen Scotia KWM cast that really kind of made me pay attention. And then we had a few SMWS bottles that we got after that that really showed well. And then going to the distillery just sort of like entrenched my love for it in a really good way. I think they have a fantastic master distiller there, and who knows how much longer he's going to be there. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, he's kind of steered them in a fantastic direction, because they are a distillery, especially with official bottlings, but that's kind of undergone a renaissance over the last say 5 or 6 years, in my opinion.
That's exactly what it is. And similar to Loch Lomond's story, it was when they got taken over by a slightly larger distiller. Oh, actually, now that I'm flashing back for a second, but yeah, but like they got taken over again by Hill House Capital, same as Loch Lomond, and I think that was around the same time when there was a big push for marketing, and that and that was 2019, I believe, too. So coincidentally, that was like as Springbank was taking off too.
Yeah.
And now their stuff started to become harder to find right before, COVID hit and everything like that. And so having a backup Campbellton single malt like that it was kind of serendipitous in a way, because I think that really helped some popularity really kind of take off.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was
no, and like what you're saying, I agree with what you're saying there, and it's I think it's kind of fortuitous that the Campbelltown boom happened. I mean, it was bound to happen with Springbank being so low production and so on and so forth as well. But Glen Scotia could have very easily just been sort of like a riding on the coattails portion of the whole Campbelltown experience. But in my opinion at least, and I think a lot of others have kind of taken note as well at how it isn't just another Campbelltown distillery that you get when you can't get Springbank, although I have talked about it being that. It's a fantastic distillery that makes fantastic whiskey in its own right.
I just like thinking, as I was thinking back about what I just said there too, is like I don't know why I just realized this, but I never put the two distilleries together before, and I just now realized they both had super ugly silkscreen bottles for a bit there.
Yeah.
Like, so it must have been a weird push from that company that just failed because like the bottles were so bad.
Yep.
Oh, that's so funny.
So it was marketed, or at least the brand ambassador on the North American side that I think was probably part of the push internationally for Loch Lomond Group at the time was a gentleman named Andrew Gray, who was before that at Bruichladdich Distillery. And was a big push internationally for them, tradesman wise. He's not really talked about as much on the Bruichladdich side or the Loch Lomond side. He's kind of sort of faded into the background. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but I don't know if it was entirely his idea or it was an idea that he just had to run with. But I remember him hawking the bottles when he was here at whiskey festivals and stuff, and trying to do it with a straight face, I guess, when it comes down to it too.
I want to track down those bottles just to have them. I want like the whole lineup.
That's right. Well, you could probably just get one and then just change the tint level on Photoshop just to get the different styles.
So on the nose of the Victoriana here, like I was definitely getting like a little hint of a floral kind of perfumey note. I'm getting it on the palate too. Excuse me, I'm getting it on the palate too, where it's just I can't tell if it's not quite Parma Violet or anything like that, but it's definitely like I don't know. It's not even a rose candy. I'm gonna say general floral because I can't really put my finger on it, but
Yeah.
it's definitely not lavender or violet or rose or anything like that. But
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
It's so it's Earl Grey tea meets bubblegum for me.
There's definitely bubble gum on it. Yes.
Yeah. And that bubblegum note, I believe, is coming from they at least partially finished some of the content of this in virgin oak, if I remember correctly.
Oh, cool.
Very
Yeah.
cool. This is NAS too, yeah? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The Victoriana's always been NAS, and they bottle it at north of 50. I think this batch is, what's this batch at? 50?
54.2.
Thank you. And so they've always been around 52, 53, or 54, at least the ones I've tried. But I think they've always used a little bit of virgin oak for finishing when putting this together, just to make it a little bit more robust but sweet at the same time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I found the nose very sweet, and then the palate was definitely a little bit more masculine and structured, and
yeah,
very cool.
I'm not getting as much of any funk on there, maybe like a tiny bit, but definitely not compared to what we would have said that on the first one.
Yeah, it definitely has the tropical fruit coming through. It reminded me on the first nosing of like Hawaiian pizza with the pineapples meets bubble tea, where it's just like these crazy sweet tapioca and plus savory notes to it.
Cool. Very fun. Very nice.
Phil and Suzanne say, for me, the nose is like opening a tin of blackcurrant powder covered candies. That's Suzanne. Yeah, totally agree. Right down to the powder on the candies as well.
Cool.
Also has a little bit of Swedish berry, since we're on the bumpy looking berry candies note.
Yeah, good call. Good call. I guess I can show a couple photos here too, actually. No. I now, as I mentioned before, I've got fewer photos here because of the situation of when we were there. It's just, yeah, it's unfortunate. Like we were, it was so it was after the night of, so we went to Springbank and okay, so I guess we ferried over from Isla and we drove straight to Campbellton, which was a reasonably long drive, a few hours, but it was like Bowmore in the morning, ferry, drives, like Springbank, dinner kind of thing. So it was quite a long day. And the next morning it was like, well, we got to get to the airport in Glasgow. So we woke up and we did Glengyle, Glen Scotia, and then we drove up the coast kind of thing. And like I said, we did it as it was just dumping rain, like out on the street next to Glen Scotia here where we parked. When we left to go to leave, there was garbage cans just blowing down the road, like full on the big rolling garbage can just blowing down the road with the wind. Like it was so crazy. But luckily we were kind of on the tail end of it. And we didn't really, it wasn't too bad. Yeah, I think like the road is just over that fence there, and like this is so there's Andrew, and this is, yeah, I mean, this is kind of the best we could do with it, but it was a quick tour, to be honest with you, though. But still very, very nice. I can't remember the name of the gentleman who gave us the tour, but it was very, very good. The thing that stuck out of my head was what Andrew was talking about when he was here way earlier. I think it was probably like in the early 2010s or before that even. The only reason, this is their mash tun, but the only reason why I even took a photo of this is because he mentioned that when he was here last, there was actually flakes of rust and paint falling, like just falling off of the roof of this thing into the mash tun or into the fermenters or something like that. And like it was just so dirty. It was just not a distillery, I think, that really had a lot of care put into it. But yeah, well, what can you do?
Yeah, no, I remember Andrew telling that story and being there myself, and just everything at the time is like you're showing now, like fresh coat of paint. And I love, like, it's just seeing the exterior of the building again just takes me back. Like I love the just like it's almost Jim Beam-esque if you go to Jim Beam Distillery in Claremont, where it's just like, we're going to paint everything white, so that you don't see the black alcohol mold, and then you're going to go in behind the building and see, and it's just like brick and black mold everywhere.
Oh
And
my
it
gosh,
just
that's
that's Campbelltown in a nutshell. It's just this dingy, grimy, but beautiful, beautiful town.
I honestly, I didn't find it like grimy. Like I found
Yeah.
I found it so charming. Like I would go back in
Mhm.
a split second. It was like you can tell they put work into the distillery to kind of bring it back. I mean, some like here's the condensers outside on the rain. I mean, obviously they're trying to, I'm not sure if they're trying to rebuild it or fix it up still or not, but there's a scaffolding there, so they're trying to do something with it. But I mean, oops. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like I mean, it's no longer dingy, so great, right? I mean, Springbank is what it is. It's going to be this. I think it's going to be the same until something else happens on the inside. But I mean, I do kind of regret not seeing anything about like how it was dingy. Like
Yeah.
would have loved to see it. Went back when he was there, but yeah. So the warehouse was really cool to me too. It was one. So being mostly on Isla and Erin, this is the only warehouse we visited that have upright standing casks like that.
On pallets, yep.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess they fill it so that like fill and maturation are all like that, with a small exception. They said it's just easier to fill, which so makes sense, I guess. But it was a big warehouse and there was a lot of casks. Like it was kind of interesting. But the neat part too was like all I saw was a wall of casks, and I see through this little spacing here, just like you see something on the other side, and you're like, what the heck is that? And then like he literally snuck us in between one of these rows of casks in the wall, and the space was like, I don't know, like a foot a max. And there was some large lads with us too. So we had to squeeze through there somehow to get to the tiny area on the other side where they stored it dunnage style. And I unfortunately I don't have a photo of that, because that's really about the time where we were like, okay, we got to taste and go. We got to taste and go. But anyways, either way, it was still like it was brilliant regardless. But yeah, I'm not really sure how some of the larger fellows like got through that space to get into the tasting area, but we were definitely like shimmying along the wall to get through. And at that point, they had 4 casks, and we're just like, look, I really don't want to be a jerk, but can we taste that one, and we're just gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
And he was nice enough to just kind of he poured us and then poured everyone else and did what he wanted with everybody else. So that was really nice of him. It was super accommodating, and yeah, like it really couldn't have been. And we got out of there kind of just in time too, because apparently it got way worse just as we left.
Sean, I'm just going to share my screen quickly just because I'm curious. So this is the
Please.
guy that was there when Andrew and I was there. Was that the guy that led your tasting?
I think so. Yeah.
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 So that's Ian McAllister,
Oh,
and
that's
he's the
Ian,
guy
yeah.
that has really, in my opinion, really like helped turn things around and put them on the map.
Oh, man, I was in a sorry state that morning, so I unfortunately I wasn't really able to take a lot of in the way of notes. Like, yeah, that was the like I don't know why, but in the Springbank warehouse, Andrew decided not to drink his drams, so he gave me all of his. And I don't know. Needless to say, I was a quiet boy at dinner time because I couldn't really think straight or even formulate sentences.
That'll happen, especially around
Yeah,
Andrew.
yeah.
So I just want to point out too, while we're drinking the Victoriana, before we go on to the 25, Marlene, who is one of the importers / agents that brings in Loch Lomond and Glen Scotia, she mentioned what the makeup is. So for the Victoriana, it's matured in a combination of first and second fill bourbon barrels, and finished in a combination of PX and heavily charged oak casks.
That's interesting. So they
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of sherry there,
No,
from
well,
what we could tell. Like it was mostly
and in
bourbon.
your pictures, it was like everything was bourbon barrels.
Huh, interesting.
Like everything that was palletized, and then all the barrels that were shown with the Glen Scotia moniker outside the distillery, those were all bourbon barrels, from what I could tell.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose they could have been seasoned, but I mean, like, yeah, as far as I could tell, yeah, just barrels. No hogsheads or anything like that.
Speaking of visiting what Andrew calls the dilapidated distillery back in the day, Noel says Dan and I, speaking of Dan Allen, I'm guessing, since Dan is on the call here, Dan and I were there with Andrew in 2011. It was very grimy. This looks amazingly better. Still love the spirit. In fact, 93.49 immense meaty manly peaty is still one of my favorite all-time favorites. So that's talking about an SMWS bottle. That almost is like, that could be the name of your biography there, Noel.
Immense meaty manly peaty.
Yeah, it just covers all the bases. Thanks, Noel.
And only peaty because you spilled.
That's right. That's right. Well, shall we move on to the 25?
Yeah, I'm already nosing it. I couldn't wait.
Nice.
So there's a bit of a rarity. Hey, we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen the 25, and I don't know, have we? Yeah, we have.
It was here pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And fantastic then. Yeah.
I gotta be, I haven't tasted it before, so I couldn't help but be intrigued. The only even remote point of reference is like the last cask that we tried before we left was a 91 refill, and it was absolutely stunning. And we happened to see a bottle of, not that one, but it was a 95, I think, refill barrel at duty free in Glasgow. And we're like, oh man, if that's in London, oh, we're getting one. And unfortunately, it wasn't in there. I wasn't there, so I couldn't get it. But you know, Andrew got one the next trip. But yeah,
nice. This is the nose on this is gorgeous. The first time I tried the Glen Scotia 25, and I haven't had a chance to try it a lot, but the first time I tried it was at the distillery. It was like one of the first things that in McAllister poured us when we got in, and then Andrew proceeded to give me all of his drams when we got to the cask tasting. I think that's just some sort of weird rite of passage he puts us through. So
was he about to drive, or?
Yeah, maybe Harmony's next on the list, hopefully, for that.
Oh geez.
Yeah. But this has such a cool combination of like gummy bears and Jolly Rancher notes, and then like this weird like furniture polish note and slight turpentine note for me on the background.
So my first impression was like candied lemon rinds and like sweet salty pencils next to like strawberries.
Yeah.
Fresh strawberries.
Oh, that's a good call.
Cool.
Yeah, it does have a bit of that sort of like graphite minerality note to it from pencils, and again, blue cheese for me coming through on there.
Cool. Yeah, a little bit of peat on there. You're right on the gummy bear. I get more like even to specify it a bit, like white, the clear Haribo.
Pineapple one?
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
There is a nice little hit of smoke on it of some sort. Like I don't know how heavily peated these ones are or anything like that, but after 25 years, it's very pretty subtle.
I think they're. I don't know for certain, but I kind of think their peat levels vary on their new make nowadays, because I remember trying some more peat-driven young Glen Scotias and then some fairly light ones at the same time.
Oh,
man, this is gorgeous.
A nice hit of like maritime barley, like really like not even fully salty, but there's like a little bit of a salinity hint on there.
Yeah.
Well, I got to say too, kudos to Loch Lomond Group and Glen Scotia with this one. It's 48.8% alcohol. This isn't just like we're going to put out a 25-year-old and drop it down so that we can get the most bottles possible. This is still left in a fairly robust state.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if 48.8 is like if they did kind of proof it down or what.
Yeah, hard to say. My guess is they proofed it down a little bit, unless they're doing the Glenfarclas we blend to get that level type of idea.
Yeah, it's always tough to see, I guess. Yeah.
Bowling shoes right now for me on the nose.
Like pre-use or post-use?
Pre-use, where you've got like the old leather notes and stuff, but you've got the freshener that they put in there as well.
Oyster shells for me.
Cool. Oyster shells. I get the leather for sure.
Yeah. Oyster shells and bowling shoes too. Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, if you're listening, there's a name for you.
That would
It
be an
does.
event I would go to, like
Yeah.
classy food, but then just the most basic entertainment.
Oh man, like
Whoa, cool idea.
wait, that should be a Docs Vincent's thing. They could totally pull off the
Oh my
oyster shells
gosh.
and bowling shoes.
Yeah, let's
man.
do it.
You think we could like rent out a bowling alley for a tasting event or something,
Oh, that'd
and
be
like
fantastic.
book it and like pour dope shit like
Yeah,
oh man.
you gotta get a strike before you get to try this one.
Yeah. That's the under the table bottle.
Mhm.
That would be so fun.
Oh,
I remember years ago at the Banff Whiskey experience, at the end of everything, the first, second night, a bunch of the agents and got together and did midnight glow in the dark bowling at like 2
nice.
a.m. Yeah,
Cool.
I heard about it. I passed out before that, but
Mhm.
I hope to get in on it this year.
Well, shall we move on to the last one of the night?
Man, that was such a
Makes me
treat.
so
Wow.
Yeah.
That
And
was a
we're-
real
That,
treat.
that. Sorry, go ahead, Harmony.
I was gonna say, moving on to this it's like bittersweet because the bottles are sold out, and so are all of our sample bottles.
Mhm.
Like this is it.
Yeah, we had someone ask for if we still had sample bottles of it today because he'd gotten a full bottle, but he hadn't cracked it yet. And I was essentially like, well, I guess you're gonna have to crack it, buddy. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the only way forward.
The only way.
So I'm taking a second to like compare it to the first one to see if I
Yeah.
get any of that funk on either. But the
The
first
10
one,
year old.
yeah, but unfortunately it's not, it's I don't know if it's how well it survived in the glass.
Mine still is. I mean, I'm not gonna call it lively, but it's got a pretty good nose for being 40% still. But this, like, to me, going from the 25 to this, like, there's definitely a clear sort of like genealogy. Like they did the DNA test and they're definitely related.
You are the father.
Yeah, that's right. The 22 has a little bit more of like this tightly wound, like super tight grained wood note to it that I really like. Almost bordering on greenness.
Yeah, more like honeyed cereal grains on the palate too.
Mm-hmm.
A touch of green apple.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the ABV, but I find the 25 a little bit easier. Like I'm getting so much more on the nose.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like the alcohol definitely stunts it a little bit on the nose at the moment, but maybe it just needs to blow off as I swirl.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I just added a drop of water because I was feeling the same way.
Clinton Ronada say this one's like pancakes dipped in whiskey. I like
Cool.
that. Yeah.
I get a little
so
lychee on the nose now.
The biggest likely change in DNA on this one is that G&M likely would have provided their own cask or gotten a tanker of Glen Scotia and filled it into their own casks. So there would be a different provenance cask wise versus what Glen Scotia would have put it into it themselves.
And where it's matured.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Good call. Yeah, Elgin versus potentially Campbelltown. Or Elginish, I guess it's not. G&M isn't in Elgin, it's in one of the small towns nearby.
Okay.
Yeah, the peat is toned down on the G&M one. Our cask, to me, it's much more salty than peaty on the palate. It does have this nice yeasty rising sourdough note on the nose after I go back to it as well.
Yeah, honestly, even on the palate, like it's a little yeasty, but there's also a bit of a spice on there. I'm getting like a dried pepper like spice. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's a good call. Sunflower seeds are coming out for me right now too.
Oh, cool.
So 25 versus our cask, and we're not trying to shell the our cask anymore for you, so you can be truthful. You don't have to worry about hurting our feelings at this point. What do you guys prefer, the 25 or the KWM cask G&M?
I'm at the moment, I'm going to say the 25.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because the peat level is a little bit more intense.
Yeah.
Like even as I started sipping, and like now you might have some of that coating the glass, that residual peat starting to come out a lot more on the nose.
Yeah. I gotta agree. Like I love our cask, but if it's I'm choosing something to drink tonight, as much as I love our cask, the 25 just has this great sort of like blue cheese and mushroomy sort of note meets the pineapple and mango and tropical edge of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no real loser in the bunch between the two though.
Oh no. Oh gosh, no. Well, I mean, price wise, ours takes the cake for sure. But
yeah, that's true.
But it's not available, so.
Yeah, well, womp womp.
Well, before we go into the vote that I have hopefully in order, I'm just gonna go do a quick run through of the nose and palate on all these, starting back at the Glen Scotia 10, which in my opinion actually is still, at least on the nose, showing quite well. It's got a little bit of a jasmine rice wrapped in banana leaf note right now for me.
Very cool note. For me, it just fell into miscellaneous gummies, but not the good ones.
Yeah.
Just not the bad ones necessarily, but just not like,
not
the best gummies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the palate's maybe a little light coming from our cast of that, but still, like price wise and stuff too, that's a solid 10-year-old official bottle. Back to the Inchmurrin 12 for me. A lot more cracked barley notes coming through for me on this round. Almost into like Harvest Crunch as a cereal. Still a really nice fruit salad and citrus note on there on the palate.
Yeah, I'm thinking like marmalade and like marmalade on like an all grain toast or something.
Yeah, almost finishes like a powdered lemonade that you bought from a child because you felt bad for him. That had the lemonade stand up. Yeah, I am getting notes of the lemonade that you brought in today, Harmony.
Yeah, Sean, you missed it. There was a lemonade stand across the street, and I ran out and was like, "I need 5 lemonades. I brought my own tray."
So good.
Yeah.
You made that kid's day.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's right.
I talked to him later. I was like, "How'd you do?" He's like, "We sold out and made $45."
Nice.
So, yeah.
You got to tell him that the day to set that up is on Sunday, like when the churchgoers get out.
Totally, I will tell him that.
Yeah. Back to the Loch Lomond 18.
I gotta say, like that, this is such a killer dram.
I know the
18 is
pretty
so
damn well priced too. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm actually shocked that we still have that 18. Oh yeah.
That's readily available?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, what a killer. What a killer.
Yeah.
That might be
a
like the
fantastic
shocker
whiskey.
of the night.
Yeah. And this is not in the same direction, but necessarily, but quality wise, if you're a person that loved the Bowmore 18, but is kind of upset at how much the price has jumped up over the last year or so, because boy has it, and it's going to continue. Loch Lomond 18 is a pretty solid alternative to me. That's 2 drams that are like probably 2 of the best 18-year-old official bottlings out on the market.
You said a Bowmore?
Yeah. And even though they're not like direct correlations to each other, if you're looking specifically on quality for price, Loch Lomond 18, I think is fantastic.
To be fair, Bowmore is still very reasonably priced, but probably not for long.
Yeah.
What was? Oh, well, yeah. We don't want to. Like, don't tell me the price yet, because we don't want to.
Yeah, I should bring those up for later. But on to our KWM cask, which I almost have none left of for some reason.
I drank all mine. It was so good.
Yeah, how could you not? I have like the tiniest drop left.
And then it reminded me of the gummy bears more. And I bought a wicked bag of gummy bears at my family reunion and then ate it all. And I don't remember what brand it was. So I just had to message my family group chat and say, okay, who donated the gummy bears to the auction and where did you buy them? So I got my answer, and I'm going to Costco.
Oh, I was going to say plot twist. They're from a dispensary.
Oh, I hope not.
That's why they were so good.
No, it was I don't know how to say it. I don't know the brand, but with my new camera, you can see.
Hewer kind of looks like.
Yeah.
The proof on this whiskey really lets it hold up like it is.
Oh, totally.
I love it.
It's like you're making a s'more at a campfire right now for me.
I don't have one yet, but I have to make sure to probably pocket a couple at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait too long, Sean. Yeah, this is nice.
Okay, back to the Inchmurrin 12. The barley is coming through a bit more for me now. Still has that oily phenolic peat note. And then back to like tapioca and bubble tea below that.
Oh, nice.
So some of the more obvious tones that I didn't like before have kind of blown off, which I'm pretty happy about.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a little bit more mellow, a little bit more approachable, for me at least.
I think the thing that's blown off in the tasting the most is your hate for Ardmore, and maybe that's.
No, it's seriously like like it's not even hate, but like because I'm always gonna try it, right? Like I want that. Those are my goal in life, is to acquire acquired tastes, and some of them you just can't get.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm there with Ardmore.
It's your allergic reaction to Ardmore.
Yeah. You know what? If I buy if I buy that G&M one I really love, at least I can say that I have got one.
Yep.
Corey's got some coconut poking out. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I could see that.
I've never been able to find like fresh coconut in anything. And I was trying to think of the last time that I held a fresh coconut and why I don't remember the smell. And it just hit me. It was the same day I kicked the cupboard in my grandma's bed and breakfast and broke my baby toe. And so like,
yeah, that memory is going to stick with you more. Yeah.
I don't remember, because my grandpa was like, you know what will feel better? Whacking the crap out of this coconut with a hammer. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I just couldn't think about anything but the throbbing, like pain in my foot. But don't remember the smell of coconut.
Man, if you want coconut, just explore grain whiskeys, especially like independent bottlers.
Yeah. So was you're saying your grandpa's solution to things was not taking you to a doctor, it was hitting a coconut?
No, you don't fix broken toes with a doctor. You just walk it off.
Yeah, I know that from like 2 weeks ago when I broke my toe, and like
Oh,
I think even Michelle, my partner, was like freaking out. I was like, shouldn't you go to a doctor? I was like, no. Like, what are they gonna do? Put a cast on it? Like,
Yeah. And my grandpa's like, well, leave it for today, and if tomorrow it's sticking out the side of your foot, we'll straighten it. And I was like, oh, okay, is that what we do?
Yeah. Can you imagine a cast on a pinky toe? That would be like the tiniest, most acute itch that you couldn't get at.
Oh yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, no, he pulled it and it straightened out, like, and it felt so much better once he did. But I don't really count it even as a broken bone, because I feel like we all kicked our toes into something so hard that we're like, did it break? Maybe it didn't. Let's just walk it off.
Okay, back to the Victoriana. Still
That,
tons of bubblegum and banana notes there.
yeah, there's still a ton on the palate too, but it did start to, the cereal notes started opening up a little bit more. And a little like, I don't know, like a dull cooked down peach or something like that. I remember a lot of people went really nuts over this bottling a few years back. I don't mind it, but I don't know if I could say it's like worth clamoring after or anything. And definitely a solid dram. Like if you had a bottle, wicked. But we had people like searching for it, which is kind of interesting.
I think part of that, pardon me, is the high ABV versus like the rest of Glen Scotia. We've got the 10 at 40%, which we didn't have before. But the rest of it's at 46, which is still good. But they don't have, like, this is their sort of like high strength offering.
No, you know, great point. Yeah, absolutely. That's probably exactly what it is.
And it does show a lot differently versus the double cask in the 18.
I've got like no 25 year left to no.
I gotta take
any of you guys have any left? Yeah, any of you guys have any
No.
left? I could really
that
use
was
some right now.
that was the last of mine there. Yeah, that's
it's so floral still. Crazy.
We have if you guys haven't seen online, we have a 25-year-old tasting where I think it's just about all official 25s and some G&M liquid and Mortlock coming up. But tasting this now just makes me think, man, that should be in the lineup, because I think it would potentially destroy everything. It is such a good 25.
Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering what's in there, but Bowmore 25, Glenfarclas. It's not blind, is it? Am I giving it away?
No, it's not.
Okay,
The photos
okay,
up.
good.
Yeah, there's the G&M Liquid 25, the G&M Mortlock, the Bell Blair.
Yeah.
Not the old Pulteney, because that's in another tasting, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, different.
Oh, the Portiskeag.
Yeah. Which is a darn good bottle too. Okay, and last but not least, yeah, the nose on the G&M is just gorgeous. The combination of that slight brine and the big salt. And then all that tropical fruit in there is just fantastic.
The fruit seems to be coming out a bit more than it was before for me. That's nice.
Yeah.
Considering I poured it like an hour and a half ago, or over an hour and a half ago, and we only tasted it, what, like 20 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit, Sean. I agree with you. More fruit, more cream, less wood, less alcohol.
You know, and I'm just gonna start the vote here, and we can talk about our favorites as well. But I gotta say, for like a 2 distillery tasting, I can't think of 2 distilleries that would probably impress me more right now. They're just at the top of their game, and their official bottlings are just fantastic, in my opinion, right now.
I wonder if there's any way, like, I mean, obviously we're dealing with the casks we have now, but another Glen Scotia cask at some point, another Loch Lomond cask. Man, because if
this truly should be an annual revisit where we have 2 new KWM casks from each, and then we add those to the lineup. Marlene, if you're listening.
Yeah. Because there's a handful of those distilleries that we've been able to get like consistent cask yearly. Some of them are getting a little harder. I don't need to mention any names, but I mean, it's like some of them don't exist anymore. We used to get a Glendronach every year. Now we get 0, right? Like, and for for reasons, it's not a gripe. It's a
things change.
It is what it is. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like Aaron's at its all-time high. It's really hard to get casks now. Like there's definitely some there's definitely movement in the industry that might not be to the favor of a small guy like us, but yeah, I mean, Loch Lomond's got massive output, so I don't know.
So while everybody else is voting, Sean, what are your 2 favorites of the night?
I'm gonna say number 1 is probably our Loch Lomond cask, to be honest with you. I to be perfectly honest, like the top, like like our Loch Lomond is number 1. I think it's so fruity. It's like texturally, it's on point. The high ABV, although like there's benefits to having high ABV, that really also adds to that spirity tone for it, and it's just kind of what I want right now. It even speaks to like other spirits that I want, that I like when I'm drinking rum. I like things are fruity, ester heavy, kind of high proof, and it really just is what I'm at right now. Yeah. Do you want the second one now, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So number 2, like it's going to be a tie, but not a tie. I'm going to say it's a Glen Scotia 25 because I do tend to enjoy more floral whiskeys, and there's only so many of them out there. I do love like older Bowmores, although there is an era where it's a little too much for me, but that's okay. This kind of falls into that realm without being leaning into it too heavy, and I do quite enjoy it. And it's very easy to drink, and it's very nice. But the honorable mention / almost a tie though is the Loch Lomond 18, because that was a shocker, and like it almost drinks above its age in a way, where like whatever peat is on there is mellowed out so well that it's kind of hard to like I think you'd be hard pressed to like put an age on it if you were to do it blindly.
Right on. Harmony.
I agree. My favorite was our KWM Loch Lomond. I just love it. It's bright and summery, and it's hot as heck out there, which makes me want like a very fruity tropical product. And I'm partial to the ex-bourbon style profile that it offers. So I really like our Loch Lomond. I know why I don't have one. It's because I would not be coming to work tomorrow if I did. And I agree, Sean, like from my second favorite is the Loch Lomond 18. It was so beautiful and rounded and rich, and I loved the style of peat that it offers. And it's again, just like for where we are in end of August, it's the peat I want in the summer. And it's the peat I would drink all year as well, but it's just definitely a really beautiful whiskey.
Yeah, I'm not far off for you guys, and I'm so happy that you guys are on the Loch Lomond 18 train, because it's one of my favorite trains. That's my number 1, honestly. It's a Loch Lomond. There's other drams that are super fun to try and stuff, but if I've got to pick something that I could have on the regular, that is relatively regularly available, that is such a solid dram. And then number 2, I'm going to call a tie between our Loch Lomond cask again, like you guys, and the Glen Scotia 25, which is just utterly fantastic. But there wasn't a slouch in the lineup. I'm still floored at how good that Glen Scotia 10 is, as much as I did not want to like it for it being 40% alcohol. It is a great value. It's like a great 10-year-old whiskey that you can get on the regular. So
sorry, I was gonna say I thought that Inchmurrin 12 was also really delicious.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that sort of lowlandish fruit salad in a dram is so fantastic. And I love that I get a lot of that in our own Loch Lomond single cask as well. There's again, I was talking about the DNA versus the KWM Glen Scotia and the Glen Scotia 25. There's some definite correlations for me between the Inchmurrin 12 and our Loch Lomond cask.
Yeah.
So vote wise, everything's been shared, 20 out of 20 votes, which is really cool. Glen Scotia 25 took it on the first round, which I totally agree with, and I don't have any problem with. Second place, Loch Lomond 18 got second place for the first second, which is very cool. That's awesome, and it is, in my opinion, a dram that does not get enough love. Marlene, try and keep it here as much as you can, because people deserve to be able to try it. But fantastic lineup overall, and like I said, I can't think of two distilleries I wouldn't want to have side by side to do a tasting more. They show so nicely together and kind of play off each other in a really cool manner.
Oh man, I'm a little wow. Our Loch Lomond cask really didn't show quite as well as I was hoping. Like, don't get me wrong, it was up against some bangers.
Yeah. I think the difficulty with a lineup like this is there's so many that could be first, at least for me.
Does it tip anyone's hand to know that it's only $112?
I know it is a stupidly priced single cask at cask strength, which is crazy. Well, Marlene, close your ears, but it probably should be more expensive than that. Well, that's the end of the tasting, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And Sean, thank you for taking us through Loch Lomond and Glen Scotia. It was really cool to see those photos and be there, even though I haven't been there in person yet. But such a fantastic lineup and a fantastic tour at the same time. So thanks for joining us and running the show, man.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love sharing those photos, because I honestly I don't have a lot of like whiskey friends outside of the shop. So I mean, like, it's nice to show them with people. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm gonna wrap this up, but and I probably should have shared pricing with you guys. Go to our website and search Loch Lomond and search Glen Scotia. They'll all come up. But quickly, as Sean mentioned, our single cask there is $112, $111.99. The Loch Lomond 18 is $144.99. Still such a great value. The Inchmurrin 12 is $69, which is crazy cheap. And let's see if I can find the Inchmurrin here while I'm on this page. Inchmurrin 12, we're out of stock, but we'll hopefully get more soon, is again $68. So some really, really good pricing for 12-year-olds. And then Glen Scotia wise, for what we tasted, our KWM cask was $265. It says low stock. Unfortunately, we are out of stock on that one. So my apologies on that. We'll have to get that fixed, but you can try and hammer an order through, but you're probably not going to get that bottle, sadly. The 10-year-old is $90, and then the Victoriana might be a little bit different next time we see it, but it was $135. The 25-year-old, last time we saw it, was $900. Hopefully we'll see more of it in the future. It sounds like we may get a little bit more before Christmas. We'll just have to wait and see. Thank you to Marlene, the agent, for sitting in on this and telling us the makeup of the Victoriana. Thank you to Sean and Harmony, and thank you all for joining us. This was a wonderful, wonderful tasting, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one, which will be in September. Take care, guys.
See you guys.